The Red Gold and Bold podcast back at it here on a Tuesday. With the holidays coming up, we may be doing some juggling. Just an FYI, if you're catching us via the podcast, remember you can be a part of the conversation, as many people like Max and Temecula Hound Dog, Beery Mister, Daniel, Jim already rocking and firing in the chat room. You can be a part of the conversation if you join us on the stream, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's all there. Be a part of the conversation. This week we talk about a very disappointing loss to the Green Bay Packers. Didn't think they were that good, and yet the Chiefs can't get it done. Ugly game for the Kansas City Chiefs. How much do you put the blame on the officiating crew? What's a bigger concern? The receivers, is it their drops or their miscommunication? What about the problems with the offensive tackle? Is Patrick Mahomes part of the problem? Can we assume the offense is just stuck? This is what it's going to be. It's not getting any better the rest of the year. The defense, should we be surprised there? They've had arguably their two worst performances in back-to-back weeks now, plus they're taking on water when it comes to the injuries. How do we feel about that run defense in particular? Concerns against the Buffalo Bills. And, of course, we wrap it all up with some predictions. It's coming your way right now on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
That's right. Breaking it down, no matter how painful it might be after the Chiefs don't get it done against the Green Bay Packers up in Lambeau Field. I had the joy of being up there in person. Nothing like spending a bunch of money to go up and watch a game to see your team get slapped, but that's what it was when it was all said and done. Eric Eager, Jeff Chadiha, Soren Petro with you here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Jeff, let's start with you. Is this the most troubling loss that they've had to this point?
Oh, without a doubt. I don't think it's close. I think Eagles were a really good team. The Broncos were playing better. Detroit, no Travis Kelce, no Chris Jones. This was a loss that if you're sitting here expecting a different Chiefs team to show up the next 5 weeks, this was your moment of truth. This was the situation where Green Bay was better than people gave them credit for. I like them. I think Eric was more complimentary of Jordan Love going into this game, but I thought they were the more physical team going into this, and they proved they were the more physical team. That, for me, was the big takeaway, was that they really beat up on the Chiefs. They ran the football effectively. We'll talk about that. This big argument about run defense last week comes back again, full circle. But, yeah, I mean, they outplayed the Chiefs in a game that was critical to both teams' playoff opportunities. The offense, once again, was disappointing. The same problems keep occurring. I mean, it's just, I chuckle sometimes when I keep hearing people say, well, it's just a matter of time. Like, it's going to come around. They've got more chances. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. It's just who they are. And that's just the reality of it. I think that's what I took away from all this, was that moving forward, they can lose to anybody.
Okay. Eric, most troubling loss. This is it.
The Denver loss is way more troubling than this one, right? I mean, this Packers team is going to be in the playoffs. They might even win a playoff game. Jordan Love, played really well, but he doesn't necessarily have the, there was some surprise there. I mean, Love has played his best game as a pro multiple games in a row. So no, I mean, this is look, I'm not trying to be like a homer here, but this is a Packers team that has been playing well, that took advantage of the Chiefs in some weak spots, especially up the middle of the defense, running the football. 46% of their rush plays were successful. That was actually worse than the Chiefs, who were successful on 52% of their runs per runningbacksdon'tmatter.com. And so I think that this loss was troubling, of course, but I still think I think this was getting beat by a decent football team on the road in a tough place to play. And so I'm not happy that it happened. I'm not saying that this is like a harbinger for things to come, they're going to rebound from this. I agree with Jeff. This is who this team is, and they're going to have to live with it. But yeah, this is this wasn't the worst loss of the year.
I love this. Pat saying that's Mahomes having kids is the problem in this one. Let's give credit where credit's due. That's to both of you guys. I think you both had the Chiefs winning, but both of them close, right? You had this being a close game. I was the one that had this being the Chiefs walking away from the Packers, and I think there was an opportunity to win this game for the Kansas City Chiefs. Mm-hmm. But I think everything you guys have said, even on one of their better days, I don't think they were going to walk away. And I think, we've had it up there, a couple times people say, hey, this is who they are. And I do agree. I think that's where we are. The question is, will they now embrace that fact, right? Can Andy Reid embrace the fact that it's not going to be pretty? In some ways, I think he did, because as I sat there in Lambeau, there was acres, and I talked about it with Sam McDowell today. This was not like them sitting back with the shell defense and nothing over the top. There was acres of open field downfield, and the Chiefs couldn't take advantage of it or didn't take advantage of it. The Packers played a different style. The Packers seemed to be the team that said, listen, this giving them everything that the Raiders did, going up and down the field short, we're not doing that. They can't beat us over the top. If MVS gets deep, he'll drop it anyway. Right? Will they even have the right read, run the right route?
I think it's his hands on it.
Yeah. I mean, there's no real, reason to think that they're going to beat us. And I think the Packers dared them to go deep, and the Chiefs didn't have the answer. Whether that's Andy Reid, whether that's Patrick Mahomes, whether it's the receivers, I think it's all of it is what it is. But yeah, I'm with you. I think this is, a team that, and I agree a little bit with this. Donovan says the Chiefs are always vanilla against NFC opponents, as demonstrated by them recycling old signals on the INT to Sky. I think that's overly.
They went like 4 years in a row without losing to an NFC team, though. Like, we got to be like, this is they're not like, the Chiefs are finding new and creative ways to lose sometimes.
Yeah. So why then is this not the most concerning game, Eric, that we're this late and they're still looking for the offense?
Well, I said this on your radio show with, the Packers are good. Like, Matt LaFleur still has not lost a game as the head coach of the Packers in the month of December. Like, he got the job in 2019. Patrick had 0 Super Bowls when Matt LaFleur took over, and he has never lost. He's 15-0 in December. This is a good coach. This is a good football team. And that quarterback is talented as heck. Like, I mean, I know that the throw on 4th down was lucky, but for the most part, he carved the Chiefs up. And that's a good defense. Like, I think in a lot of ways, like that Denver team that the Chiefs lost to, Denver sucks. And they got handled by Denver that day. That's why it's a worse loss. This Packers team, they might go into Detroit in the playoffs and win. Like,
isn't that the whole point, though, Eric? That the defense was the strength of this team, and Jordan Love carved them up. We're sitting here saying this is going to be the big solve for all the offensive issues that the defense is going to deliver, and he just went to town on them.
But I think defense is pretty variable week to week. Plus, like, we know where the signal, like, right, you're on middle linebacker number 3 with Cochran in the stead of Drew Tranquil, in the stead of Bolton. Brian Cook, who's been a pretty good player for this team, went out. That takes Mike Edwards, who's a really good third safety, makes him second safety. Frankly, I mean, where was Chris Jones on Sunday? Everybody on this, Everybody in the comment section, everybody here calls me an idiot when I'm saying Chris Jones is not God, right? There are no gods in football. Sometimes you got to trade somebody. And, like, I got to be honest with you, Chris Jones disappeared on Sunday. So, that's concerning, Jeff. But I think, is the defense, if they get Bolton back, are they any less talented? A little bit, but I still think you can hang your hat on this defense. Defense has bad days sometimes. The offense, I don't know if I watched the same game. The red zone, the first 3 quarters of that game, the offense was perfectly fine. Red zone got in the way. Penalties got in the way. But this team, I actually was encouraged by how they moved the football in the first 3 quarters of the game against, I just think that their defense had a randomly bad game, and so their offense couldn't overcome that. But, like, I come out of that game disappointed, but not dismayed, I guess.
I don't think anybody should be dismayed, but, like, do you want to stand by 47% to make the Super Bowl and 24% to win it? I think those were the numbers at SumerSports.com. What do the numbers say now?
Yeah, I think the Chiefs are, let me look at SumerSports.com, by the way, the best analytics website for football in the entire world. Give it a shout here. We have the Chiefs as the second best team in the league behind the Niners. We have the Chiefs with a 21.1% chance to win the Super Bowl. So about 4-1 if you want to go to FanDuel.com/Petro.
4-1 to win it.
Correct.
Yeah.
I can't help you.
You don't think they're a value in the market right now? The best team, the best player in the NFL, the best coach in the NFL, a great defense. I think it'll come around.
Do I think what is the market? Sam said today it was about 17% to win the Super Bowl based upon what the implied odds were on the odds. I haven't looked on FanDuel today what their Super Bowl odds are. I put their odds of winning the Super Bowl at 12 to 15%. I think, putting them at 1-4, no. I don't even know that you put them.
Well, 4-1 is 1-5. So
okay, 1-5. No, I still don't do that. I don't know that I put them there. Just Eagles, Niners alone, and they got to get through the AFC. Now, I do think the AFC playoffs may play softer, and I think they've got a better chance to be the 1 seed than people may realize because their schedule is much easier than the Baltimore Ravens schedule is, and even the Dolphins schedule. But they are a flawed team. I don't think this is what if they lose to the Bills, which they're only a 2.5-point favorite at home. We'll get more to that game later. But if they lose to the Bills, they've dropped 3 out of 4. And then what are we going to do? Like, well, the Bills are good. They've got Josh Allen. I mean, he's number 1 in QBR. And I can give you
hungry, desperate.
Yeah, I can give you reasons why they lost. I could do that about 14 different losses they had in 2012 that led them to having the number 1 overall pick. There were reasons, but at the end of the day, they lost 14 times. I mean, I don't know why those reasons are just going to go away. And I stand by what we've talked about and we've argued over a couple of times here, Eric. I'm one of the reasons why I'm questioning this team is because they're not offensively driven. I would much rather see a team that's, dropping a game 37-34 right now than one that's really struggling to get points when they need it. And let's talk about this. I know this is one of the things you wanted to get into. And I'll get Jeff's thoughts first, though. The efficiency of the offense. Right, this was and this was a little troubling to me. The first half was like 4 possessions, and I think that's a problem for the NFL. You're kind of beating down scoring by just becoming lack of big play. Now, part of that I think is, like I said, I think the Packers had a good game plan and the Chiefs had a bad one. I think there was time, and the Chiefs right now are at a spot where they don't have the guys to take advantage of big plays over the top. But from a big picture standpoint. When Eric will give us some of the more of the numbers about the analytics of it, because I know we had one of our great listeners that wanted to hear a little bit more about this, that the offense really wasn't that big a problem because they scored their points per possession was pretty good, right? Like, which I heard somebody talk about, well, listen, Florida State didn't get in to the college football playoffs because, their yards per play against Louisville was terrible. Yeah. And Dominique Foxworth said, listen, we play games with a score and have them won, not who can win the yards per play category. I get it. The yards per play will lead us to predictive, a way to predict what will happen in games. But like when you look at it, is this a good offense?
No. I mean, It's an okay offense. It's not a great offense. And the bar for this team is great offense. Eric mentioned having the best quarterback in football. Guess what? He's not so great when the receivers stink. He's not so great when the offensive tackles aren't reliable. He's not so great when he doesn't have a deep threat. He's not so great when the tight end is getting older. I mean, all that. He doesn't play in a vacuum. It's like saying, we're not talking about basketball here. We can just hand him the ball and he's going to score 50 points. Like, he needs help. And so that's the most troubling thing about it, is that they've had, I think 3 or 4 game-winning drive opportunities this season and have converted none of them. And it used to be a gimme, a layup, that he was going to, what happened to 13 seconds, go right down the field, get a field goal? What happened to that offense? What happened to the offense that, okay, we got 40 seconds ago, a minute ago, we get a touchdown? That's not happening anymore. And so we can quote all the stats we want to quote to create this impression that it's not that bad. But if you watch this team week in and week out offensively, they are not explosive. They're not consistent. They're not reliable. And they're as vulnerable as they've ever been with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid running the show.
Yeah, I think that's fair, because you can be as the most vulnerable you've been and still win. I want to be clear about that. No one is saying that they can't, especially if they can get the 1 seed, that they can't win, 3 games in a row and end up being the champions. And I think there are some flawed teams that could be laying out there. But Eric, right now, QBR for Patrick Mahomes, he's 4th. That sounds good. Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, and Josh Allen are in front of him. Yards per attempt, 9.6 for Brock Purdy, 7.9 for Dak Prescott, 7.4 for Josh Allen, 7 even for Patrick Mahomes. Like, that's one that you've harped on. I mean, this is very, very different. And when you see the 49ers hanging 9.6, it's not that this magic defense has been created that nobody can move the ball on. There are people that are getting the ball down the field, or at least one guy.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's funny. You were like, is this offense good? And then Jeff was like, no, it's not terrible, but it's not great. But like, they're good.
I think I would amend. Hang on, I don't want to speak for Jeff, but Jeff, if I were to amend, I did a bad job of phrasing the question, because I think what Jeff said is, yes, they're good, but they're not great. Yeah. And this team has always had great, right? I want to make sure.
I think that's an incredibly fair way to categorize this offense. I think one of the things that, and I'm pulling this up right now, so if Tommy wants to talk a little bit of mess about how I come up with like fake stats and all this kind of stuff to try to refute Jeff. There's this thing called series success rate, which is basically how often you turn one set of downs into a new set of downs, right? And Kansas City is 7th in the NFL at 73%. The teams that are better than them are who you would expect: San Francisco, Miami, Buffalo, Philadelphia, and Detroit. San Francisco's at 76%. Kansas City's at 73%. 3% difference between basically being the best offense in the league at turning a first down into another first down versus 7th. The margins are thin. And this is to the point where you're talking about, Petro. You started seeing the too high stuff. In the NFL this year, 51% of plays have 6 or fewer men in the box. 42% of plays have split safeties, 41.8, I think. Those two are the highest in the NFL since all the charting companies started charting the stuff. So you're seeing too high, you're seeing soft boxes, and you're seeing NFL teams saying, "Come and get me" in the passing game, right? And they're letting Isaiah Pacheco run for, whatever the success rate was yesterday. Pacheco, 53% success rate. Any running game that's over 50% success rate, meaning 5 yards or more on first down, half the yards on second down, all the yards on third and fourth down. That's good offense. The problem is the margins are thinner now that there are fewer possessions. 2021, the Chiefs were first in the NFL in points per drive. They also had the fewest drives in the NFL because every team was doing this to them. I don't know what you're supposed to do defensively to stop this, right? You could stop the run a little bit better. We talked about that yesterday. But even then, the run, like the Chiefs were more successful running the ball Sunday than the Packers were.
Let me interject a stat into the discussion. 22.9. That's how many points per game they're scoring. Because all the per play and per drive and all that's great, but at the end of the day, it's a scoreboard that determines who the winner is.
But that's league wide though. If you look at points, I mean, points per game are about the same as last year, but they're like 5 points.
Yeah, but they're not where they were last year in years past in relation to other teams. At 22.9 points per game, they're now just 11th in the NFL. And that's what ultimately wins.
Yeah. No, and the margins are, like I said, there's a 3% difference.
They're not, Eric. Dallas is scoring 32.3 points per game. Miami is scoring 32 points per game. San Francisco, 29.3. Philadelphia, 27.4. Buffalo, who's 6-6, 27.3. Detroit, 27.3. Baltimore, 27.
What are all those teams surrendering?
The Colts and Texans are scoring more than the Chiefs.
I mean, yeah, the Texans are a big playoff. Like
oh, come on. In our next podcast, we're going to laugh them out of the playoffs. Isn't anybody going to be beating the gong for them? So don't beat the gong now, because I know we're going to turn around and talk about who's going to make the playoffs, and you're not going to be chirping Colts.
I'm not chirping anybody. I'm saying what I was trying to say before you interrupted me was the difference between the best team scoring 30 points a game and the Chiefs scoring like 10 points fewer is a 3% difference in how often you turn a first down into another first down. That's 3 out of every 100 series, right? Like set of downs. That's an MVS drop. That's a Travis Kelce being older and slower. That's a Jawan Taylor penalty. That's a Donovan Smith penalty. That's all that's, the margins are thin. Now, I choose to look at this a little bit positively and say, you're getting almost nothing out of your wide receivers who are NFL players.
That's positive.
You get, well,
I mean, but what like there are so many different things you said there.
I'm sorry, but you look at this. Are the Chiefs squeezing every last bit of juice out of the orange on offense? No. Yeah, can they improve down the stretch here? Yes. They're the best player in the whole league playing quarterback. They're the best head coach calling their plays. They have a young receiving core that they are clearly trying to test out, and it's not going all that great. They're a good offense, not a great offense. I have some faith that Andy Reid can push the right buttons and make them into a great offense down the stretch. Am I holding my breath? No. Who was the person on the show last week that said, I don't think the Rashee Rice thing's going to carry over? I think it was because of injuries, not because of Andy Reid being intentional about it, and that was true. I'm not holding my breath, but can they? Absolutely.
I find it frankly quite amazing that the term faith would be brought into a statistical discussion, that you have.
Well, because we're making predictions, Petro.
Okay. I mean, I think the whole point about the numbers are we love the numbers when they say what we want them to say. Right. And I think guys like you, frankly, Eric, are so smart and have so many numbers that you can find. This is what I think you have to be careful of, is you can find numbers if you dig far enough that will tell you what you want to believe. And listen, what's undeniable is they're not scoring.
Yeah.
They're down like 10 points a game from what was their championship best. So I think to act like it's same old Chiefs is erroneous.
You're putting words in my mouth. I'm not saying any of this is good. I'm just saying they're within the bounds of what I like. We had this exact same argument last year where you guys are all like, can this team win the Super Bowl with this defense? And I'm saying I wouldn't prefer this defense if I were creating a team from scratch. But hell yes, it is good enough to win the Super Bowl. Back when they were giving up all those points to the Chargers, back when they were giving up all those points to the Texans, when they went to overtime with Houston last year. So this offense is good enough to win the Super Bowl. It's not what I like. It's not what I'm preferring. But like all this stuff about like, oh, your numbers are too high, blah, 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 blah. Like, I just don't buy it. I think this team's a championship contender that's giving us some fits right now.
I don't think anybody's arguing that they can win. It's what does that look like? Because that's the thing that, I mean, I'm with Soren on this. Like, we can get all the numbers and stats we want, but at the end of the day, the eye test tells you that I think they are squeezing as much as they can out of this offense. I think there's guys you can pretty much write off. Sky Moore, you can write him off. Kadarius Toney, you can write him off. They got one running back. They got an aging tight end who's a Hall of Famer, and they got a receiver who's got some promise in Mahomes. That's what they got. And so, yeah, I don't see this magic solution coming that makes you think. I mean, again, it's like I think sometimes, and this, I'm not trying to beat up on Eric because he's a stat guy here, but I think it's so easy to go back and say, well, and last year they did this, or 2 years ago they were this. It's this year. It's been 12 games of this year. And 12 games of this year has taught us one thing, is that the offense cannot operate at a high enough level from week to week to be trusted.
Yeah. And I'm not sure where Rashee Rice gets the negative end of the stick here when he has 8 catches and 9 targets for 64 yards. I don't think that's where the issue is. I think the issue is elsewhere. But I think the point is Sky Moore's not emerging, right? Like, that's not going to happen. MVS is, I think, mentally gone. I think he always had trouble catching the ball, and I think he's a hot waste right now. And I think it's because he's mentally, he knows it's bad right now. And I don't know why we would expect it to come around. Are they squeezing all the juice? No, nobody ever operates at maximum efficiency. So I think that's somewhat fool's gold to say, well, look, they can play better. Yeah, but will they? And there's nothing this year that says they will. And I think what's more important is, to Jeff's point about 13 seconds, they have Sam McDowell said this today. They have 0 fourth quarter comebacks. 0. Like, they just don't do it. When they have to score, when they had to score in the past, they could go score. They're not doing it now. So why would we think that they can in the future? I think what we're saying is the Chiefs go into the same bucket as, like, they're much more Baltimore now. Like, do I think Baltimore wants to be down, could be down 24-0 and roar back against the Texans the way that Chiefs team did? No, but neither can these Chiefs. 24-0, they are dead. They are dead in the water. Can they get down 7-0, 13-7? Sure. But, I mean, I think that's the scary part. And I don't think Eric, you're the one who taught me about defense being a 0-hole game. What I think the problem is like, it's the offense that, can't bail. The defense can't play perfection, right? It's a 0-hole game, but it's also something that you can't count on for a shutout. If your plan is to win a game 3-0, go home. You're screwed. The game has gotten more, while it's regressed back offensively now, it's still more NBA style. And you're going to have to put some points on the board. And when they've needed it, and when this defense has needed them to stay on the field to give them a break, they haven't been able to do it. I know they can play better. Why do you think they will? Why do you think MVS is going to get better? Sky Moore's going to get better. You just ran down the one guy that most people have hope for, and that's Rashee Rice. I
didn't run him down. I'm just saying that, like, he had 64 yards a week after he had like 100. He had a decrease. Like, in all of us were saying, smash the Rashee Rice button again. And
well, if that's his bad day, that's 1,000 yards
a
year.
I'm not running him down. I'm just saying that, like, this team is, like, Andy Reid is not smashing the easy buttons for this offense. He's just simply not. And he could in the playoffs, and he very well may in the playoffs. But right now, they're not smashing the easy buttons on offense.
We're proudly brought to you by our friends at GAN Asphalt and Concrete. They serve the greater Kansas City area, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems? Not anymore. Listen, you've got a business. First impression you're going to give to your clients, to your customers, is when they drive onto that lot. If they can't park easily, if they're knocked around into the parking lot, not only does it cause liability problems for you, it does not give a good impression. Make that great first impression by having a brightly striped parking lot. GAN Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lots. Find them online at GANasphalt.com. How much is
Petro?
Yeah.
You said that they can't come from, like, they literally just erased the 14-point deficit on the road.
No, they didn't. They got to within 2 and then spit it back out.
They weren't down 14-0 to the Raiders?
Oh, to the Raiders? Yes, they did. They
were down 2 touchdowns,
yes,
and then covered a double-digit spread
with 3 quarters on the clock. Eric, yes, they did against the Raiders. So I'm just saying, like, corrected, and I should guarantee that they will win every game.
I think, and this, I did listen to your show today. I think the one thing that we're all not talking about is also what was true in 2021, which I know was not a Super Bowl season, but they were 1 half and 1 meltdown away from a Super Bowl that year. I don't think the quarterback is playing as well as he normally is accustomed
that was the question that I was going to ask before you interrupted me, and that is, how much of this does the quarterback wear?
Not all of it. I mean, I think Mahomes deserves, like, I think Patrick has to accept who this team is and deal with some of the, like, I was talking to Sam about this. Like, the one thing that Mahomes doesn't like doing is throwing contested passes, right? They brought Kelvin Benjamin in like 5 years ago. He threw one back shoulder fade to Kelvin Benjamin, and it was incomplete. He's like, screw this. I'm never throwing to that MFer again, right? He doesn't throw, like, the one frustrating wide receiver for Kansas City is Justin Watson. Why? Because he gets open, he earns targets, and he drops the ball, right? And, like, he gets open. Why is Travis Kelce so, instrumental in Mahomes' career? Because he gets high school wide open. And some of that is Patrick's eyes and all this kind of stuff. Patrick has to be more comfortable throwing the ball into tight spaces. Patrick has to be more comfortable doing, like, and again, I'm not one to rip on Mahomes. In fact, I think most of the people on Twitter think I'll never rip him. But, like, I think Patrick deserves a small amount of the blame here.
Look, I think, and I said this before, and I stand by it, they're running an offense. They're being forced to run an offense. They don't want to run. They don't like running. And that's really where the disconnect here is. What Eric is saying is true. They can do some of these things. The question is, do they want to do them? Do you want to be Mahomes has to be a game manager sometimes in some of these games. Sometimes you have to take what teams give you. He's never been somebody who he could throw on time if he wants to. He can do whatever he wants to. He doesn't like playing that way. Andy Reid has created an offense that doesn't require him to play that way. And so the things that the receivers have to do to get open in this kind of offense with these kinds of skill sets really require a quarterback who's more like Brock Purdy or more like Tua Tagovailoa, who's going to take 1, 2, 3, throw, balls out. All this. That's why Rashee Rice, to me, he's a really promising talent. He's played well, but he's limited because of how they have to get the football to him. It's always smokescreen, hitch, slant, and those are harder to throw in the zone defenses if you're not getting the right looks. I mean, I think Mahomes, and he even said this in the bye week. He said they told him, you've got to trust these guys more. So Eric's right on that point. There is an unwillingness to put the ball in harm's way in some situations. But my God, I think you also have to accept that he's just not playing with the same kind of talent. And so I don't care who you are. And I've seen Tom Brady go through this. Aaron Rodgers has gone through this. I've seen different quarterbacks in different situations have to struggle with this. It's when you start losing people like Tyreek Hill, when you start not having, when you start expecting your quarterback to win no matter what's around him, it's always a dangerous game. And that's why I feel like it can't be changed until next year, because they went into this season thinking, we can get Patrick anything. He'll be fine. He'll do great. And now they're finding out there is a threshold to that kind of thinking.
Yeah, I think, Eric, I guess I bristle a little bit. I'm somewhat protective and call it homerism, maybe. I mean, I'm certainly willing to self-analyze and see if that's what I'm doing here. I do bristle when the quarterback gets it, because I don't think the protection's particularly fantastic. They've done all kinds of things like not be able to get 1 yard on third down and move the football. They've had, numerous things go on around him. Andy Reid gets the usual same old. Listen, when they were scoring 34 points a game, people were bitching. The first 3 calls I took after the Chiefs lost 54-51 to the Rams in 2018 were about Andy Reid's play calling, for Christ's sake. So, he gets complaints, but not what I think are like serious complaints. I think this is more of an Andy thing. When Jeff talks about playing that way, first of all, who's coaching the wideouts?
Yep.
Like, you have some of the youngest wideouts, and they have a guy. It's almost like Andy thinks he can take anybody from anywhere and have him coach any position.
Yep.
Greg Lewis all of a sudden was the running back coach, so Wayne Embry could come in.
Where have we heard that before? By the way, you want to go to Boston, Foxborough?
Yeah. I mean, there's some of it. I mean, he did have take his offensive line coach and make him his defensive coordinator. So there have been some bizarre things with the coaching staff that have been done. And this one's puzzling to me. I mean, I would think that there's a line around the block to coach for the Kansas City Chiefs. This is almost like I'm helping out a buddy get his kid's career going. I mean, listen, somebody's ass is on the line here. Brett Veach doesn't know wideouts. I don't think that's the case. Andy Reid doesn't know how to call plays, design plays. I don't think that's the case. These wideouts are dolts. I don't think that's the case. There's a little bit of all of this, but then why is a guy who really has virtually no experience coaching the number one offense's biggest weakness?
What, Joe Blameyer?
It's not even Blameyer now. It's Embry, right?
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
They moved him on 1 year. He's moved on to something else.
Yeah. Here, I'm just
Blameyer was the guy last year then.
Which to me, they moved on because they decided, let me go make sure I'm not getting out of whack. Either way, I mean, Blameyer's resume is not one of, this was a puzzling thing last year. So I just want to make sure I didn't screw this up. Wide receivers, Connor Embry.
Okay.
I mean, Connor Embry,
what's Blameyer doing now then? What's his title?
He is pass game coordinator.
Okay. So he's moved up. Okay.
So he's moved up to being like next in line for quarterback coach and then OC. Mm-hmm. But I mean, listen, I don't get that. I mean, and I don't see why part of the reason the wide receivers might not be playing well is they've got a guy who doesn't have a lot of experience. There's a guy that spent his whole career with, what's his name, who got the 1 year with the Texans as the head coach. David Culley. I mean, one of the most veteran, respected wide receiver coaches out there. It's
a valid point because, and Eric knows this, there is no more volatile position to coach in this league than wide receiver. And I've said this before too. You cannot tell me that Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, anybody who's playing on their first contract is not thinking, what the hell am I doing here? Like, how is this going to work out for me? You cannot tell me that and it's going to make every route, every ball coming your way that much more critical in your eyes, because it's every season for every team is always a chemistry test, right? You're trying to get different personalities to fit into the same vision and the same mindset and the same focus and all that stuff. And it just feels now that I think there's so much weight on these receivers when they are in positions to catch balls, when they make mistakes, and you can feel it. I mean, am I wrong? I feel like I watched Sky Moore out there or Kadarius Toney, like they are under so much pressure now. That's why I feel like they're not going, and having the right receivers coach who understands that, who can talk to guys and get them focused you're right. I think it's a huge, huge deal.
By the way, just to close the chapter on it, 2 seasons as a defensive assistant in 19 and 20, offensive quality control in 21 and 22, and in 23, the wide receivers coach.
So Blameyer had a job for 2 years, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
So listen, guys get promoted. Listen, I'm not trying to dump it all on Connor Embry comes from a football family, and Tim Grunhard speaks very highly of him. I'm sure there's a lot of coaching skills there. I just think it's puzzling. Like, to me, like you have who's their best position coach?
Probably Andy Heck.
Yeah.
Andy Heck or
Cullen, probably Cullen.
Cullen, the defensive line coach, who has, and by the way, Andy Heck has a $20 million right tackle. Cullen has a $30 million defensive tackle, yet the guy who just got to the side of the ball has got all the newbies and the cast-off from Green Bay. I think that the hard part here is that last season represented something. Last season was far more brittle than we all believed it to be, right? Patrick played a lot better last year than he has this year. I think the offensive line, even especially on the interior, played better last year. And the wide receiver group, which I don't think is any – I mean, you can make Rashee Rice and Juju Smith-Schuster comparisons. They're about as equally talented, but you add age and injury to Travis. That has been pretty bad, from a decline standpoint. That coupled with a little bit of decline in both the interior offensive line and the quarterback,
and it's just it was way more brittle. Like all of us, myself included, I'm included in the blame here, and probably the Chiefs too, thought we got by with this kind of stuff last year, we can get by with it this year, and like that was a mistake.
I think for me, if the Chiefs are looking at it going, well, pat this and pat that, I'm with Jeff on the like, oh, they'll just get by without it. Number one, you piss those guys off.
Yeah.
You don't want to piss your quarterback off.
Yeah.
Tom Brady ran to a great unit around him in Tampa because no one would listen to him and pay attention to him.
Yep.
Like it or not, pain in the ass or not, Aaron Rodgers ran out of Green Bay to a place that had a bunch of talented skill position players. Like this is something, and I fully expect Brett Veach to perform a wide receiver enema the way he did an offensive line enema after Patrick Mahomes was running for his life in the Super Bowl against Tampa. I think they're going to be, as much resources they can possibly put towards it. But I think, it's just, to me, I actually I put more at Andy's feet than I would Patrick's feet.
I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, and really, Andy, look, Feature's done a really good job. I know people want to jump on him and think that he's got all the answers or he's the reason for all the problems, but he's finding players that Andy wants to coach. Like, that's the reason why Mecole Hardman came through here. It's the reason why Rashee Rice is here, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney. These are guys that Andy wants to have so he can be the mad scientist and go out there and do all his scheming. But sometimes you got to have dogs. Sometimes you just got to have dudes who go out there and win. And I'm sure for Chiefs fans, it's frustrating to see Jordan Love in a gotta have it moment, throwing the ball up over Jalen Watson, and Christian Watson just goes up 40 inches and just snags the ball there. But Jalen Hurts.
It also shows that it's not illegal for any of these guys to like emerge. I mean, that week that Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles, the Packers offense couldn't move for anything. That team couldn't move the ball in the first half of games for the first half of the year. And now all of a sudden you got Jaden Reed, you have Christian Watson coming back and being at least useful. You have I'm trying to think, Romeo Doubs. Like, these are not household names. Romeo Doubs a 4th round pick. Jaden Reed's a 2nd round pick, as is Watson. Like, everybody, yeah, I agree with Jeff. Like, it's not that like Brett Veach hasn't tried. It's just like the development in these players has been pretty bad compared to like around the league. Like Green Bay, for example, like Jordan Love, like he didn't have anything from a receiver standpoint at the beginning of the year, and now he's turned those players into useful players. Like where is that in this club? Is because I don't believe that like these guys are completely useless.
Yeah, but they're choosing a certain type of receiver is the point I'm making. And so when you look at the Bengals, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, you look at obviously the DK Metcalf, Mecole Hardman. We've talked about Andy has a type. And so maybe this is a big offseason for them to look at it and say, you know what, maybe it's time to get a new type here. Maybe it's time to go out and get somebody who's a little bit different than what you want, so we can actually have a lot more variety and explosiveness in our offense.
And I need them to throw a slant one time. Not off of an RPO, not off of like, I need Patrick to go 1, 2, 3 and throw a slant to what I guarantee you MVS can catch a slant. I guarantee you.
Well, and that's the thing is, are they not calling that because he doesn't want it, or are they not calling it because they don't want it, right? And I do think Rashee Rice is a break from that type. He's not the fastest, 40 guy out there, but he is more of a win a jump ball type. And so I think there's an approach there. The offensive tackles, how big of an issue is that, Jeff?
It's a big problem. And I bristle. I know people say, or maybe it was, I don't know what the numbers are now, but people were saying Jawan Taylor is so good as a pass blocker and his number, he rates really high, and you should see what kind of grades he get. I'm like, dude, I'm tired of penalties. Like, I just can't watch it. This offense, again, is in a place now where a couple penalties a game kill you. And that's just what he is. And I know this is red meat for Tommy Lester, but and Donovan Smith is he's not going to be here next year. I mean, what he is what he was in Tampa. That's pretty clear. So yeah, they are going back to the same conversation. It's hard to, you mentioned all the green grass down the field. It's hard to call downfield plays when you can't protect that well. And I thought the Packers, Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, those guys would get after him in the pass rush. They got after him in the pass rush.
Yeah. How big of a concern are the tackles for you, Eric?
This sounds like, because I was the one, like, Jawan Taylor's a negative player this year, 100%. I think if you take out the penalties, he's been fine. Like, I don't think he's getting his ass kicked, but the penalties, to Jeff's point, like, how many perfect blocks you need to have to make up for a 10-yard penalty as a lineman? It's a lot of plays. So if he's getting a penalty a game, like, he's worse than, like, I tweeted this out, like, is there anybody who thanks the Lord for MarquezValdes-Scantling more than Jawan Taylor? Like, we'd be talking about Jawan Taylor if MVS could catch a gold, right? Like, but he gets kind of ignored because, you know, there are other parts of the offense. But, like, it's not acceptable to have as many penalties as he has. I think if you can clean that up, this will end up being an okay signing. But as of right now, it's awful.
Well, Jawan Taylor's played good football, right? Sky Moore never has. Like, I like that. That's one thing. Like, I will have optimism there. He's played well before. Does he get called for penalties? Yes. I mean, is that probably why the Jags, like, we're not paying him? Sure.
But how much different is a penalty than a drop? I mean, a drop and a penalty are about equivalent to me, right? Like, the drop looks worse, but like a 10-yard.
I'm just saying.
I'd rather 2nd and 10 than the 1st and 20.
Well, do you think Sky Moore, first of all, and I don't even think Sky Moore's problem is as much the drops as it is he has no catch radius and creates no separation. He catches like
other than that.
Yeah, other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? I mean, you know, Jawan Taylor, to me, a lot of the penalties, first we can talk about all the penalties, he did pile up a ton early, but they do continue. They don't continue at the same rate, but he continues to add on to the league total. I see an athletic, talented guy. I don't see an athletic, talented guy in Sky Moore, right? I don't see a guy who can judge a ball in MVS. I mean, he gets twisted up worse than a 40-year-old drunk playing center field, you know, at the beer league softball. The way he wanders around looking over his shoulder and everything.
Magoo.
Every time I watch him play now, I do not believe that the AFC Championship game happened.
No.
His performance against the Bengals is the least congruent thing that I've seen in forever. But, like, it also, the funny part, and I don't want to make this about Patrick and MBS, like, but MBS had the same problems in Green Bay, but, like, Rodgers went to him despite that. Like, I remember there was a game at US Bank Stadium where he dropped like a 50-yard bomb, and then they just threw it to him the next play for a 70-yard touchdown. Patrick, this is another part of, like, the Patrick thing, though. It's like Mahomes doesn't throw passes unless he thinks there's a almost 100% chance it's going to be caught. And I think that up and down nature is like why MVS has like gotten in this mental funk, because he knows, unlike in Green Bay, he's only going to get one target a game. And if he messes that thing up, it's over for him. And I do think that it's a lot in his head. And I think like a lot of the receivers on this team are like that. I think the only one that comes back and is Justin Watson, but he doesn't have a lick of talent either. He can get open, he can get the ball, but he can't catch. So like But
most of these guys, even Rashee Rice to a certain extent, have spent the spring and summer working out with Mahomes. That's the part I don't get. Like, I can understand the drops or lack of talent, but the miscommunication to me is baffling, because you should have this down. You've been spending all this time together trying to get a feel and a rhythm and a consistency, and it's still an issue.
It's year 2 for MVS.
Yeah.
Let me point something out here. By the way, MVS right now, who has the most snaps at wide receiver for the Chiefs this year?
Is it MVS? It wouldn't surprise me if it's MVS.
Oh, it's MVS. 475. Second, Sky Moore, 457. Then we get to Rashee Rice, 407. Justin Watson, 366. 475. Do you know what he's on pace for? 387 yards. 387 yards in a 17-game season while playing the most snaps on the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like it is amazingly, and like this, like if I were, the owner, I'd be like, I don't care what it is, fix it. Like you just fix it because this is a mess. And I think MVS will be gone after this year. I wouldn't have told you that coming into the season. I'd have told you they'd try to renegotiate the number down and keep him, or create some incentives to where he can make even more money. So they're not going to bother. They have to cut bait and run if it doesn't get a lot better real fast. You mentioned a little bit the run defense, Jeff. How big of a concern do we look at this and say it is not? The defense as a whole did not play well in the last couple of games.
That first drive, to me, was such a tone setter for this game in terms of how the Packers were going to play and how the Chiefs were not going to be able to handle them. That game was really won in the trenches to me. I mean, they pushed them around on offense. They got after Mahomes on defense. We talked about it last week, and I know Eric wasn't on board with this. For me, if you're talking on a scale of 1 to 10 run defense, it's gone from whatever it was, 6, I said last week, now it's 7. And it's going to keep going up because teams recognize that, okay, we don't have to go out and run for 200 yards. If we commit to it and we got a banger, yeah, you better believe we're going to get after it because, yeah, Chris Jones seems a little disinterested when he has a defender run. Obviously Nick Bolton's not there, Drew Tranquill's not there, and it eats up clock. It gets the offense into a rhythm. I thought they ran the football very effectively, and it was once again a demoralizing thing for the Chiefs. This was the first game where it felt like people are starting to figure the Chiefs out defensively, and it's great to have the numbers they have defensively, but you also have to have. If you want to rely on your defense to win a championship, you got to have some game wreckers. You got to have some guys who turn the ball over. You got to have some guys who put points, who give you points like they got in the Miami game. And they don't have that right now. And so, yeah, I thought that it was a very big red flag for me.
27 carries by ball carriers, not Jordan Love running. And one of those actually might even been a designed run for Jordan Love. But all total, they ran the ball, 25 times. All total out of 63 plays. As we mentioned, it was a pretty short game overall. How concerned are you, Eric?
I am concerned about the defense. And I think if we all were peacocking because, I was peacocking. I'm like, remember if Nick Bolton was out 2 years ago, this team would be a travesty. And now, they have depth, but, depth was stretched the other day. And like the other part is Derek Nottie for the 3rd straight year is not a good football player. And they continue to trot him out there. He has his moments but like, he's ultimately not very good. And this team, I mean, the one thing, and I agree with Jeff. I think Brett Veach deserves a lot of credit for this team. I think he's done largely a good job. The one thing that they have not done that the rest of the league has seemed to figure out is it's almost more important now to have a big nose tackle who can stop the run than it is to have a 3-tech. Like, it's like flip the script back from the Monty Kiffin Tampa 2 days. It's more important to have a 1-tech than a 3-tech. And they're kind of the wrong direction here in that. Like, you need a Jordan Davis, you need a Travis Jones in Baltimore. You need like they're just simply lacking at the nose tackle position, which doesn't help them play it doesn't help them play lighter boxes. And that means that even though their defensive backs are very good, they're not getting the same help that other teams' defensive backs are.
Buffalo expectations, good spot to catch a team that's lost, the way they have, and has lost 6 of 8 games by 1 score, Jeff, or is this the wounded animal that you should not want to see?
Wounded animal. I thought Buffalo would win this game when the season started. I'm even more convinced they win it now. I think if Jordan Love is giving you problems, wait until Josh Allen comes in. I mean, it's always tough on Spagnuolo's defenses when you're talking about mobile quarterbacks, and you've seen Jalen Hurts, you've seen Jordan Love now, and I think now you're going to see Josh Allen doing a lot of the same stuff. I mean, the part of it's the Bills are desperate. Part of it's coming off a bye week. Part of it's the Chiefs just played a physical game against Green Bay. Part of it's that Buffalo's won here the last 2 years in the regular season. But I just feel like, I think watching Buffalo against the Eagles 2 weeks ago, I thought they look like a playoff team. I think they're going to come in here and get a win.
Yeah. Eric, the Bills dangerous right now. What do you view Buffalo as?
Yeah, Buffalo's a weird team that has like a 20% chance to make the playoffs, but like a 1.5% chance to win the Super Bowl should they make the playoffs, which is a pretty like weird kind of deal. They're scary if they get in. Josh Allen's been, I think, he's not the MVP of the league because you need to win football games to win the MVP, but he's been, in my opinion, the most efficient quarterback in the NFL. It's going to be a tough test for the Chiefs. Now, I think Von Miller's probably out. No Tre'Davious White. No Matt Milano. Their defense is bad. Like they're not a good defense anymore. So that'll help. I think McDermott's also a little bit on tilt. I think he in big spots is not going to make the decisions that he's accustomed to making, which are usually pretty damn good for them. And then I think on offense, like this is unless Dalton Kincaid can continue to improve, like they're weak on offense because they lack a secondary option in the passing game. And I think that the Chiefs obviously are very deep in the secondary. The one thing is the run game for the Bills could continue to be effective with James Cook if they commit to it. So I see a ton of paths where the Chiefs can lose. I think they ultimately win at home just because I think that they're ultimately top to bottom a stronger team than Buffalo.
All right, so you like the Chiefs to get the win. You got to score?
Point spread's 3, so let's go 24-20.
For 20. All right, Jeff, what's your concern level? What do you think it looks like?
Bills 28-23. I think the defense continues to struggle against Josh Allen.
Yeah, the good news is that Buffalo doesn't really commit to the run. When they do, it's the quarterback that does it the most, and he's not been doing it as much. Yeah, I think this will be interesting. I don't know that this is, there's a little bit of styles makes fights. I don't know if this is the best style for Buffalo to come in and try to play. And the history of the Chiefs is that when they're, when they lose once, they don't do it again. They usually bounce back pretty well. It's a really big test. I think gone is the idea that they're going to start modeling people offensively. But they need to bounce back and play well. And I think they need it to prove to themselves because it's been a couple of bad performances, a couple of missed opportunities and different things where they're just kind of being beaten physically, as you said. And I think they need to get back and get that figured out. I think that's going to be essential for them to play well in this game. I don't know if it's going to happen. Patrick Mahomes, low on the point spread. I usually like it. It usually does well. So I'll take him to get it done. But, yeah, I'm more in the 24-21, it's 2.5 what I'm looking at. So 24-21, 20, 26-20, 26-21. A field goal maybe to ice it at the end if they get the cover. But yeah, it's concerning for sure. No doubt about it. Don't forget, Gann Asphalt and Concrete has you covered with any and all parking lot issues you might have with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Super Sports, I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City, saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red Gold and Bold podcast.